I pushed open the heavy doors of the grand building, the cold air biting at my skin as I stepped inside, my heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. The room was bathed in an aura of luxury-polished floors, crystal chandeliers hanging from above, and soft murmurs of conversation filling the space. But I didn't come here for pleasantries. I scanned the room, eyes narrowing when I spotted them, my parents, standing beside Blake, the golden child, the one who had everything handed to him on a silver platter. My heart clenched. They hadn't even looked my way when I entered. Of course they hadn't. I wasn't part of the picture they'd painted for themselves. Not today. Not in their world. Blake noticed me first, his expression hardening as he saw the look in my eyes. "Oh, this is rich," he muttered under his breath, half to himself, half to his fiancée, who clung to his side like an accessory. I could practically hear the judgment in his voice as his gaze swept over me. Disapproving. Cold. I had never been good enough in his eyes. Not for him. Not for them. I walked up to them, my every step deliberate, each one bringing me closer to the confrontation I'd been dreading but knew had to happen. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice cutting through the ambient noise. The words were ice, and they struck harder than I intended. Blake flinched, but quickly masked it with a forced smile. His hand tightened around his fiancée's arm, his usual arrogance creeping back in. "We're busy." My mother chimed in, her voice tight, the smile on her face strained. Nothing more than a mask she wore for these events. I noticed how she adjusted the pearls at her throat as if they were an anchor to hold her in place. In control. "We're hosting a party. This is neither the time nor the place." I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. "No," I said flatly. "This is exactly the time." I wasn't about to let her shield herself in pretentious words. Her smile faltered for a moment. Just a flicker, before it returned. Colder this time. My father appeared at her side then. As always. His stoic demeanor. His jaw tight beneath his silver beard. He gave me a curt nod. His eyes filled with irritation. But also something deeper. Something I couldn't place. Disappointment. Guilt. I couldn't care less. "Not anymore. Let's talk in private," he muttered, his voice low, the usual authority gone. He motioned for me to follow him, but I didn't need the invitation. My feet moved of their own accord, and the bitterness in the pit of my stomach pushed me forward, past the guests who were far too busy with their own lives to notice the storm brewing. I could already hear the whispers as we passed. "She's back," I heard someone murmur. The troubled one. The heavy oak door closed behind us with a dull thud, and we were alone. My father stepped to the side, his posture stiff, the tension in the room palpable. I took a deep breath, gathering the words I needed to say. "Zoe collapsed today," I said, my voice cracking slightly, though I held it together. His eyes flicked to mine, but he didn't immediately respond. My mother's face twitched, her lips pressed together, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted her jacket. It was as if my words had just brushed against something she wasn't ready to face. "She's in the hospital, Dad. She needs surgery in the next 48 hours. Or, I couldn't bring myself to finish it. I didn't need to." He understood. He cleared his throat, looking away. "How much do you need?" His voice was guarded, like he had already made up his mind. 25,000, I said, each word a punch to the gut. I could see him processing the number, weighing it, measuring it against whatever cost had already been sunk into Blake's wedding. His fingers tightened around his wrist. I could practically hear his mind ticking, calculating what this would cost him, what he was willing to sacrifice. "We're committed to Blake's wedding," he said, his voice cold. the words falling out like they had no weight. I felt the air in the room grow heavier. Blake's wedding. The cost of his perfect day was more important than my daughter's life. My mother's voice cracked. We've already put down a lot of money for the venue. The catering. The honeymoon package. It's non-refundable. I took a step closer, the rage bubbling up inside me. But I kept my voice low, controlled. You've chosen a wedding over your granddaughter's life. I thought family meant more to you than some stupid party. The words were out before I could stop them. But they weren't just words. They were a revelation. A truth I had been living with, but never allowed to say aloud until now. My father didn't meet my gaze. His eyes dropped to the ground as if he couldn't look me in the face anymore. The silence stretched between us, thick with the weight of everything unsaid. Finally, my mother spoke again, her voice cold, almost pitying. Maybe you should have planned better. Maybe this wouldn't have happened. The silence that followed my mother's words was suffocating, heavy enough to crush the air from my lungs. I felt my fingers tighten around the edge of the chair as I fought to keep my voice steady. You think this is my fault? I shot back, my words laced with venom, each one falling like a slap in the face. My mother's hand trembled slightly as she adjusted the clasp on her pearl bracelet, her eyes darting away from mine, unable to meet the accusation hanging in the air. Blake, of course, couldn't stay quiet for long. He leaned back in his chair, taking a long sip of his champagne, the glass catching the light in such a way that it seemed almost mocking. This is why you've always been a mess. You know, he said with that infuriating smugness, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Always dragging everyone down with your drama. He leaned forward, lowering his voice as if the words he was about to say were some kind of revelation. You just can't plan for anything. Can you? I took a step closer, the anger bubbling up inside me, raw and unfiltered. You have no idea what it's like to struggle, do you? I said, my voice shaking with a mix of rage and something colder, something that had been building inside me for years. You just want everything handed to you on a silver platter. And when things don't go your way, you blame everyone else. I could see him bristle, just a flicker of irritation before he quickly masked it with a tight smile, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. I didn't ask for your help, Blake, I said, my voice quieter now but still full of steel. But you could have at least acknowledged that my daughter's life mattered. I thought you were family. For a brief moment, my father said nothing. His face had gone pale, but his eyes remained locked on mine, calculating. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, weighing the words he was about to say, the things he didn't want to admit. Finally, he shifted in his chair, running a hand through his thinning silver hair before he spoke, his voice low and guarded. Zoe's situation is tragic, but you've made poor financial decisions. You can't expect us to just drop everything for this. He sighed, his eyes never leaving mine. We've committed to Blake's wedding. You knew that. Blake's wedding, I repeated, incredulous, my voice rising with the disbelief I could no longer mask. You're really going to stand here and tell me that my daughter's life is less important than that? My hands were shaking, my nails digging into my palms, but I didn't care. The words were out now, and I wasn't about to take them back. You're being unreasonable, my mother said, her tone as smooth as ever, but I could see the cracks. Her perfect exterior was beginning to chip away. We've already spent so much. It's not just about the money. It's about the timing. We have commitments. She looked at Blake for support, but he was too busy adjusting his cufflinks to offer her any comfort. I felt a cold laugh rise in my chest, though it had no warmth in it. It's always about the timing, isn't it? I said, taking another step forward, my eyes not leaving hers. You've been making excuses for years. I don't need your charity. but I need you to show up when it matters. You know what? I don't even know why I thought you'd be different this time. Blake snorted, swirling the champagne in his glass, his face twisted in amusement. You always make everything so dramatic. Maybe if you had planned better, you wouldn't be in this mess. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I wasn't going to lose control now. I locked eyes with him, my voice sharp. You have no idea what it's like to sacrifice, to put everything on the line for the people you love. You've never been in a position where you have to choose between your pride and your family. I leaned in slightly, my voice cutting through the tension. You've just been waiting for your turn to shine, haven't you? Blake froze, his smile faltering for the first time. I could feel the power shift in the room, even if they didn't want to admit it. I wasn't the same person who had walked into this house, desperate for help. I wasn't asking anymore. We're not asking for your help, I said slowly, my voice low and dangerous now. But I'll remember this. And so will Zoe. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but he didn't say a word. My mother's gaze flickered away, unable to meet mine any longer. Blake, ever the coward, leaned back in his chair and lifted his glass, pretending he hadn't heard me, pretending nothing had changed. But I knew, and I wasn't done. Not yet. You'll regret this, I said quietly. But my words hung heavy in the room, as if they had taken root in the air between us. For a moment, nobody spoke. The silence was thick and suffocating, and I could feel it, the beginning of the end. I sat in my office, staring at the sleek lines of the design drafts spread out before me. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed to mock me, each second dragging out the memory of my family's betrayal. I'd let their words sink in, let the anger build in the pit of my stomach until it had nowhere to go but outward. They thought I was weak. They thought they could dismiss me, discard me like I didn't matter. But they were wrong. I had a plan. And this time, it wasn't about asking for help. This time, I was taking what was mine. I picked up the phone, dialing the number I'd memorized from the list of Blake's business partners. I'd spent days gathering information, combing through the cracks in his carefully constructed empire. His facade wasn't as solid as he thought. As the phone rang, I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking under the pressure of my body. "Hello," came the voice on the other end. Unfamiliar, but carrying the weight of a man who knew how to make deals. "I need to talk to you about Blake Williams," I said, my voice steady, cold. I could hear the hesitation on the other end of the line. "I know about the money he's been skimming, the deals he's been hiding from his investors. I think it's time you know where your money's really going." The words slid out of my mouth like a snake's tongue, sharp and calculated. The man on the other end paused, and I could feel the tension building on his side. He knew what I was offering him, knew the weight of the information I held. "I'm listening," he said, a hint of wariness creeping into his voice. "Meet me tomorrow morning at the Riverside Hotel. I'll bring the documents," I replied, hanging up before he had a chance to speak. My mind was already moving ahead, calculating the next move. I could almost taste the satisfaction that would come when Blake's world started to unravel. He had no idea what was coming. The next day, I walked into the Riverside Hotel like I owned it, head held high, my every step a reminder of how far I had come since that night. I spotted my contact right away, a man in a well-tailored suit, looking nervous but trying to hide it. He stood near the bar, eyes scanning the room. I approached him slowly, letting the tension between us build, savoring the moment before the storm hit. "You have the documents?" he asked, his voice low, cautious. I nodded, pulling a folder from my bag and sliding it across the table to him. His fingers shook slightly as he opened it, scanning the pages with growing disbelief. I knew something was off, he muttered, looking up at me. This is huge, I smiled, letting the silence hang for a moment before speaking. It's just the beginning. The look in his eyes was priceless. I could see the wheels turning, the realization settling in. This man, this investor, was about to become an ally in my game of revenge, and he had no idea how badly he was about to hurt Blake. As he fumbled with the papers, I excused myself and stepped outside, the cool morning air hitting my face. My phone buzzed, and I glanced down to see a text from Mark. Everything okay? I could feel the weight of his concern, but I couldn't afford to let him know what I was about to do. He'd never understand. This wasn't about him. This was about me, about everything I'd lost, everything they had stolen from me. I sent a quick reply, keeping it short. I'm fine. I'll explain later. Walking back to my car, I could feel the fire burning inside me, pushing me forward. The pieces were falling into place. It wasn't enough to take down Blake. No, I needed to break him. I needed to shatter the life he had built so carefully, so arrogantly. And I was just getting started. By the time the evening came, I had already laid the groundwork. Blake's business partners were circling, the ones who had once trusted him with their money, now questioning everything. The cracks in his empire were starting to show. And soon, he wouldn't be able to hide from the truth. I had called in favors, used every connection I had, and made sure the information I had was disseminated in the right places. By the end of the week, Blake's world would be a house of cards ready to fall. It felt almost too easy, like a game I had been playing for years. And now, the final round was here. As I sat in my car, watching the lights of the city blink in the distance, I allowed myself a small, bitter smile. They had underestimated me. And now, I was going to make them pay. When Blake finally figured out what was happening, it would be too late. He would be forced to watch everything he had worked for slip through his fingers, and there wouldn't be anyone left to help him. He would be alone, just like he had made me feel all these years. I leaned back in the seat, closing my eyes for a moment, letting the cool breeze settle my thoughts. It wasn't just about getting revenge anymore. It was about taking back everything they had stolen from me. The respect, the trust, the power. And this time, I wasn't going to stop until I had it all. As the city lights flickered below, I knew one thing for sure. Blake had no idea what he was walking into. But he would soon. I stepped into the sleek, glass-walled conference room, the weight of the moment settling in my bones. The large windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but it was the people inside the room that commanded my attention. The investors, their sharp suits and colder eyes betraying their own desperation, sat around the polished table, waiting. I had prepared for this moment for weeks, ensuring every detail was in place. Today, I wasn't just walking into a meeting, I was walking into a battlefield, and I wasn't about to lose. The CEO, a man who prided himself on his quick judgment, leaned forward as I entered. He was older, graying at the temples, his expression tight, like he already knew the game I was playing. "Ms. Williams," he said, his voice gruff but measured. "We've heard a lot about you. You seem to be quite the talk of the town these days." His eyes flickered to the folder I placed on the table, the same folder I had handed to Blake's business partner just days ago. "I assume you've come to make your case." I smiled, the cool confidence I had carefully cultivated slipping into my voice. "I'm not here to make a case. I'm here to end one." I placed my hand on the table, letting my fingers press into the cool surface for a moment as I let that sink in. The room was silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning. As they waited for me to continue, I could feel their eyes on me, calculating, unsure if they were dealing with a woman on the edge or someone who was already 10 steps ahead. I have information that will make every one of your investments in Blake Williams worthless. I continued, my voice steady, almost detached. Their reactions were immediate sharp intakes of breath. A flicker of disbelief passing across their faces. They thought Blake was untouchable. They thought his empire was bulletproof. They were wrong. I've got evidence of his financial mismanagement, his false reports, and his entire system of lies that's been running unchecked for years, I added, watching their faces transform from curiosity to alarm. The CEO looked down at the folder again, his fingers trembling slightly as he flipped it open. I'm here to offer you a way out, I said, leaning back in my chair and watching as the room shifted beneath my words. The CFO, a woman with sharp features and even sharper eyes, glanced at her colleagues before speaking, her voice low but laced with suspicion. And what do you want in exchange? The question wasn't a surprise. I knew they'd ask. They always did. I leaned forward, meeting her gaze without flinching. I want control of the Westbrook Hotels project. It's been on the table for months, but Blake's been sitting on it, using your money to build his own empire. If you want this mess to disappear, you'll put everything in my hands. There was a tense silence as they all exchanged glances, their minds clearly racing. I could hear their thoughts without them speaking. They knew Blake was a liability, but handing everything over to someone like me, that was a gamble. You've done your homework, the CEO finally said, his voice strained. But you're asking us to throw our own money into someone else's hands. You really think we'll just hand over control? I smiled. A slow, cold grin that spread across my face. You don't have a choice. The words hung in the air like a dare, a challenge they couldn't ignore. Blake's done. His reputation is about to be shattered, and no one is going to trust him with their money anymore. You can either try to salvage what's left of your investment, or you can watch him burn. The tension in the room grew thicker, the air almost suffocating as they weighed my offer against the looming disaster. The CFO's fingers drummed on the table, her eyes flicking between me and the documents in front of her. She didn't want to give in, but she knew what would happen if they didn't. Do you have a plan? She asked, her voice barely a whisper, like she was already dreading the answer. Of course I have a plan, I said, the corner of my mouth curling into a smile. First, we cut off all communication with Blake's associates. We leak the information to the media in a controlled manner, making sure every last detail hits the news cycle at the right time. His investors will panic. The stock will plummet. And then, while everyone's looking the other way, we make our move. You'll get your hands on the most valuable assets, and Blake will be too busy picking up the pieces of his shattered life to even notice. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of my words settling in. I could almost see the wheels turning in their heads as they considered the path I was laying out for them. Finally, the CEO leaned back in his chair, his steely eyes fixed on me, and he nodded slowly. You're ruthless. But I'll give you this, your plan might just work. I knew then that I had them. It wasn't about being ruthless, it was about knowing exactly where to strike. And I had just delivered the first blow. Before they could say anything else, I stood up, collecting my things with deliberate calmness. Remember this moment, I said, my voice low and final. This is your last chance to make the right choice. If you want to survive, you'll follow through. And you'll never hear from Blake Williams again. As I walked out of the room, I could feel their eyes on me, burning into my back. I could almost hear the decisions they were making, the deals they were striking in their heads. This was just the beginning, but I had already won. I arrived at the sleek downtown office building just as the sun began to dip below the skyline, casting a golden light across the glass walls. The entire building seemed to reflect my thoughts sharp, hard, and unyielding. I stepped into the lobby, my heels clicking on the polished floor, the sound echoing through the high ceilings. Today, everything would change. Blake had underestimated me, and today was the day he would realize just how wrong he was. I walked straight to the elevator, pressing the button without a second thought. As the doors closed, I could feel the weight of everything that had led me to this moment, the lies, the betrayal, the hurt. All of it had built up to this one last confrontation. I had no more patience, no more hesitation. I was going to finish this. When the doors opened, I stepped into the penthouse office, the same one Blake had claimed was the future of our company. It was cold, sterile, the walls lined with bookshelves that held nothing but empty promises. Blake stood by the window, his back to me, looking out over the city. I didn't need to say a word for him to know I was there. Did you really think I was going to walk away? Blake, my voice was calm. But there was something colder beneath the surface, something that could freeze a man in his tracks. He turned slowly, a half smile playing on his lips as if he had expected this, as if he thought I was just another player in his game. You really think you've won? Don't you? He sneered, taking a step toward me. You don't have the guts to destroy everything I've worked for. You're nothing but a bitter woman who can't handle losing. I stood my ground, not flinching as he approached. You're right, I said, my voice low, but cutting through the space between us like a knife. I'm not bitter. I'm something far worse. I took a deliberate step forward, letting the distance between us close. I'm the woman who's about to destroy everything you've built. I'm the woman who's going to make sure you lose it all, and then watch you beg for mercy. Blake's smirk faltered for just a moment, a flicker of uncertainty passing across his face. It was gone almost immediately, replaced by a defensive anger. You think this is your victory? His voice was rising now, no longer the smooth, condescending tone it had been moments before. You're out of your depth. This isn't just about money. This is about power, something you'll never have. I met his gaze, my eyes unwavering. I have power. Blake, the kind you'll never understand. I don't need to destroy you to win. I just need to expose you. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I took a step back, watching his face as the realization began to set in. Do you really think I would let you get away with everything you've done? All the lies, the manipulation, the fraud. It's over. Blake, your empire is crumbling, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. His expression twisted with a mix of disbelief and anger. You don't know what you're dealing with. He spat. I'll make sure you regret this. You think you can just walk in here, ruin my life, and get away with it. I'm already getting away with it, I said, my voice sharp as glass. I reached into my bag, pulling out a flash drive and setting it on the desk in front of him. This is the beginning of your end. Every dirty secret, every shady deal, all the evidence you've been hiding for years. It's all on here, and I'm going to make sure it sees the light of day. Blake's eyes went wide as he reached for the drive, but I stopped him with a single word. Don't. You'll have enough time to read it when your world falls apart. He sneered, but the edge of panic was creeping into his voice now. You think you've won. You think this will make a difference. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I stepped back, watching him, letting the silence linger for just a moment. It's too late for you, I said finally. You should have thought about that before you destroyed everything that mattered to me. Your reputation, your business, it's all in my hands now. And I'm going to make sure it's torn to pieces. Blake took a shaky breath, his composure slipping as the weight of his mistakes came crashing down on him. I could see it in his eyes, the fear, the realization that his world was about to unravel. You're not the only one who knows how to play this game, I added quietly, my gaze never leaving his. I don't need to destroy you. Blake, you're doing it all on your own. I turned to walk out of the office, my heels clicking against the floor with a finality that felt almost deafening. As I reached the door, I glanced back over my shoulder, catching his frantic gaze. "Enjoy the ride down," I said softly, my lips curling into a smile. And with that, I stepped out, leaving Blake to face the fallout of his own actions. The game was over, and I had won. I sat at my desk, watching the city lights flicker outside, their distant glow matching the calm that had settled within me. The chaos of the past weeks was finally over, and the pieces I had set in motion had fallen exactly where I'd planned. Blake's empire was collapsing, bit by bit, and with each news headline that surfaced about his financial ruin, I felt a quiet satisfaction. But it wasn't just the money or the power. It was the knowledge that he had underestimated me, and now he was paying the price. The phone buzzed on the desk, breaking my thoughts. Mark's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated for a moment before answering, my fingers lingering on the edge of the phone as if the weight of it could somehow delay the moment. "Hey," I said, my voice steady, the calmness almost eerie compared to the storm that had passed. "Is it done?" he asked, the concern in his voice clear despite the simplicity of his question. "It's done," I replied, letting the words sink in. "He's finished. They all are." I could hear the exhale of relief on the other end of the line, the tension that had been there since we first learned what Blake had done lifting for good. "And now, I have everything I need," I added, letting the weight of those words hang between us. "I knew you'd get there," Mark said, his voice filled with admiration. But there was something else in it too, pride, and a little bit of awe. "You did what no one thought was possible." I smiled, though no one could see it. "I didn't do it for them. I did it for Zoe. For us. I needed to take back control of my life." The room felt colder as I spoke the truth, but it was the truth I had earned through every ounce of struggle. And I won't let anyone forget what they did. The silence stretched for a moment. Not uncomfortable, just heavy with the finality of everything that had happened. "So, what now?" Mark asked, and his question brought me back to the present. "What now?" I repeated, my fingers tapping gently against the desk. "Now, we move forward. We build what we want, not what they forced us to accept. I'll keep my promises to Zoe, to you, and I'll never let anyone hold that over me again." He didn't say anything more, but I could hear the smile in his voice. "We've got this." I closed my eyes for a moment, savoring the feeling of peace that washed over me. But then I opened them again, looking at the glowing city outside, the world still spinning, indifferent to the changes I had caused. It was time to move on, to leave the past behind. My phone buzzed again, and this time, it was a notification from the news. Another headline: "Blake Williams' empire in ruins as scandal breaks." I stared at the screen for a moment, the headline flashing like a warning. But this time, I didn't feel the same rush of emotion. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't seeking revenge. I had found something far more powerful: control. I stood up, walking to the window, looking out at the city below. It had always been so easy for them to push me aside, to make me feel small. But now, they would see what happens when you push a person too far. I turned away from the window, my resolve hardening. It was over. And now, for the first time in my life, I was free. If you've ever been in a position where you've felt overlooked, underestimated, or ignored, know this: you have the power to take it all back. Don't wait for anyone to give it to you. Go out and claim what's yours. Thank you for following along with my journey. If you've been inspired, if you've learned something, leave a like, share this story, and subscribe. There's always more to fight for.